Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you love hearing about true crime stories that uncover the shocking realities behind some of the most heartbreaking cases, you're in the right place. Today, we're exploring another devastating case that will leave you questioning the very nature of trust and betrayal. And hey, if you're new here or haven't already, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. It's the best way to support the channel and never miss a new story. Let's get started. In the early hours of May 11, 2021, in a quiet suburb near Athens, a young mother's life was tragically cut short. 20-year-old Caroline Crouch was found lifeless in her bedroom, her baby daughter nearby, and her husband, Bobish Anagnostopoulos, tied and gagged. He told police a harrowing story of a violent home invasion, claiming that armed robbers had broken into their home, murdered his wife, and fled into the night. It was a story that gripped the nation, a husband left devastated, a child left motherless, and a community demanding answers. For weeks, this story dominated headlines. Friends, neighbors, and strangers alike expressed their sympathy for Bobish, a helicopter pilot whose grief seemed as deep as it was public. From interviews to heartfelt posts on social media, he painted a picture of a loving marriage torn apart by unimaginable violence. At Caroline's funeral, Bobish held their infant daughter in his arms, his face etched with sorrow, as mourners surrounded him with support. But the picture wasn't as clear as it seemed. Beneath the surface of this seemingly straightforward case, cracks began to appear. The evidence didn't align with the narrative. Investigators found no signs of forced entry, no fingerprints, and no DNA from the alleged intruders. Neighbors reported hearing nothing unusual that night. And then there was the technology, a silent witness to the events inside the home. Caroline's smartwatch, Bobish's phone, and the surveillance system began to reveal a timeline that told a far different story. As the investigation unfolded, what seemed like a tragic robbery began to unravel into something far more complex and far more disturbing. This wasn't the work of faceless intruders. This was something else entirely. And the man who had stood at the center of this tragedy, cradling his daughter and speaking of loss, would soon be exposed as the mastermind behind it all. This is the story of Caroline Crouch, a young woman full of life and ambition, and the man she thought she could trust. It's a story of betrayal, deception, and a community blindsided by a truth too devastating to comprehend. How did a man described as the perfect husband become the prime suspect in his wife's murder? What drove him to orchestrate such a calculated facade? And how did investigators piece together the truth from the lies? Today, we take you inside the shocking case of Caroline Crouch and the unraveling of a deception that fooled an entire nation. Caroline Louise Crouch was born on July 12, 2001, in Athens to British and Filipino parents. Her father, David Crouch, a retired engineer from the UK, and her mother, Susan Della Cuesta, originally from the Philippines, provided Caroline with a culturally rich upbringing. At the age of 8, Caroline moved with her family to Alonissos, a small Greek island known for its natural beauty. Here, she thrived in a close-knit community, excelling in her studies and embracing her love for animals. Caroline's passion for martial arts reflected her determined and spirited personality, traits that friends and family often admired. Described as vivacious and kind, she had aspirations of a bright future and a strong sense of independence. Charalambos Bobish Anagnostopoulos, 13 years Caroline's senior, was a helicopter pilot and flight instructor. Known for his polished demeanor and professional achievements, he cut the figure of a charming and ambitious man. Bobish and Caroline's paths crossed when Caroline was just 15 years old. Their relationship, despite the significant age difference, developed quickly. Friends of the couple described Bobish as attentive and affectionate, traits that made him seem like the ideal partner. In 2019, during a vacation in Portugal, Bobish proposed to Caroline in a hot air balloon, a grand romantic gesture that culminated in their marriage later that year. To outsiders, they appeared to have an enviable life, one filled with love and ambition. On May 11, 2021, police received an alarming call from Bobish Anagnostopoulos. His voice was frantic as he reported a violent robbery at their Glyka Nera home. Officers arrived to a scene of chaos. Caroline was found dead on her bed, suffocated with a pillow. Nearby, her 11-month-old daughter Lydia lay unharmed in her crib. Bobish himself was discovered tied and gagged, a sight that initially seemed to corroborate his harrowing account. According to Bobish, 3 armed burglars had broken into their home during the night, demanded cash, and fled after killing Caroline. They had allegedly stolen 15,000 euros in cash, which Bobish claimed was kept in the house for a property purchase. Caroline's murder sent shockwaves through the community. The gruesome details, a young mother murdered in her home while her baby was left unharmed, sparked both outrage and sympathy. Babish's story of the robbery seemed plausible. Many empathized with the image of a grieving husband and father, thrust into a nightmare beyond comprehension. At Caroline's funeral, Babish's apparent sorrow moved those who attended. He held Lydia in his arms, painting a heartbreaking portrait of loss. The Greek police, determined to find the culprits, announced a €300,000 reward for information leading to the capture of the alleged robbers. The initial focus of the investigation was to track down the supposed burglars. A Georgian man was apprehended while attempting to cross the border into Bulgaria, raising hopes of a breakthrough. However, despite initial suspicions, no evidence connected him to the crime. As investigators combed through the evidence at the crime scene, troubling inconsistencies began to emerge. The window through which the intruders allegedly entered showed no signs of forced entry. Moreover, forensic analysis found no foreign DNA or fingerprints, a puzzling detail for what was described as a chaotic robbery. As weeks passed, the narrative began to shift. Detectives expanded their investigation, scrutinizing not just the physical evidence but also the digital footprints left by both Caroline and Babiš. This deeper dive into the couple's lives unveiled contradictions that would prove critical in solving the case. Caroline's smartwatch recorded her heart stopping hours earlier than the timeline Babiš provided. Data from his mobile phone revealed activity during the time he claimed to have been tied up and incapacitated. Additionally, the memory card from the home security camera had been removed hours before the alleged robbery, a detail that added further suspicion. The absence of physical evidence supporting a break-in, coupled with the inconsistencies in Babish's account, shifted the focus of the investigation. Police began to consider the possibility that the tragedy was not the result of an external attack, but something far more personal. Babiš, once seen as a grieving husband, now found himself under intense scrutiny. The investigation into Caroline Crouch's murder took a significant turn when digital forensic evidence began to tell a story that starkly contradicted the one Babiš Anagnostopoulos had shared with police. At first glance, the crime scene supported his harrowing account of a robbery gone wrong, but closer analysis of technology within the home painted a vastly different picture. Investigators pieced together a timeline that unraveled Babish's claims and brought new clarity to the case. One of the most critical pieces of evidence came from Caroline's smartwatch. This device, which tracked her heart rate and physical activity, revealed that her heart had stopped at 4:11 a.m., nearly 20 minutes before the time Babiš claimed the robbers entered their home. This discrepancy immediately cast doubt on his version of events and forced investigators to consider the possibility that the crime had not been committed by intruders at all. The data from the smartwatch was precise, showing her declining heart rate and the exact moment her body went still, adding irrefutable evidence to the case timeline. Babish's phone also proved to be an incriminating source of evidence. Despite his claim that he had been tied up and rendered helpless, his phone activity suggested otherwise. Logs showed that during the time he claimed to be incapacitated, the phone was in active use. Applications were opened, and movements were recorded, directly contradicting his account of events. These inconsistencies further eroded his credibility and pointed to a fabricated story meant to mislead authorities. Perhaps the most telling clue came from the surveillance system installed in the couple's home. Investigators discovered that the memory card, which would have recorded any movement or activity during the night, had been removed at 1:20 a.m., hours before the supposed robbery. This act of deliberate tampering highlighted premeditation, suggesting that Babiš had taken steps to destroy evidence well before the crime occurred. The absence of the memory card reinforced the idea that the robbery was staged and that the perpetrator had a deep knowledge of the home's security setup. As these pieces of evidence began to accumulate, the narrative Babiš had constructed started to crumble. The absence of any physical evidence supporting a break-in, combined with the damning digital footprints, left investigators with no choice but to view Babiš as the primary suspect. Forensic experts and detectives meticulously reconstructed the events leading up to Caroline's death, focusing on the discrepancies between Babish's story and the objective data collected from the scene. One theory that emerged early in the investigation was that Caroline's murder was the culmination of a series of escalating domestic disputes. Friends and acquaintances later revealed that the couple's relationship, though seemingly perfect on the surface, had its share of turmoil. Babish's controlling tendencies and Caroline's attempts to assert her independence reportedly caused frequent arguments. Investigators considered the possibility that one such argument spiraled out of control, resulting in Babiš committing the ultimate act of violence. The staging of the crime scene also pointed to a calculated attempt to mislead authorities. From the hanging of the family's dog, a shocking act meant to suggest the cruelty of the intruders, to the removal of the surveillance footage, every detail seemed designed to shift blame away from Babish. The meticulous nature of these actions suggested a level of premeditation that was deeply unsettling. The revelation that Babish, the grieving husband and father, was now the prime suspect in his wife's murder sent shockwaves through Greece and beyond. The betrayal felt by those who had supported him during the initial stages of the investigation was palpable. Friends who had attended Caroline's funeral and stood by Babish's side expressed disbelief and anger as the truth came to light. The community in Alanisos, where Caroline had grown up, was particularly affected. Many residents felt a deep sense of betrayal, having welcomed Babish as one of their own and shared in his apparent grief. The media quickly picked up on the sensational nature of the case. Headlines in major outlets across Greece and internationally highlighted the shocking turn of events. British newspapers such as The Guardian and networks like BBC News covered the story extensively, given Caroline's British heritage. In the United States, media giants like Fox News and the New York Post followed the developments closely, emphasizing the role of technology in solving the crime. Social media also played a significant role in shaping public perception. As news of Babish's arrest and confession spread, online platforms buzzed with outrage and grief. Many users shared their shock at how convincingly Babish had played the role of a devastated husband, only to be revealed as the perpetrator. Others expressed sorrow for Caroline and her infant daughter, Lydia, who was now left without parents. The case became a flashpoint for discussions about domestic violence and the importance of recognizing warning signs in relationships. Amid the media frenzy, Caroline's family issued heartfelt statements, emphasizing the need to honor her memory and protect Lydia from the shadows of her father's actions. Their words resonated deeply, reminding the public that at the center of this tragedy was a young woman who had her entire life ahead of her, and a child who would grow up without her mother. The case of Caroline Crouch not only captivated audiences but also forced a broader reckoning within Greek society. It highlighted the hidden realities of domestic abuse and the lengths to which perpetrators might go to cover their tracks. The role of technology in uncovering the truth became a focal point of discussion, as many marveled at how devices like smartwatches and mobile phones had provided the crucial evidence needed to solve the case. This reliance on digital forensics underscored the evolving nature of criminal investigations in the modern age. The betrayal and deception at the heart of the case lingered in the public consciousness long after Babish's arrest. For those who had followed the story, the question remained, how could a man who seemed so devoted commit such an unspeakable act? And what lessons could be learned to prevent similar tragedies in the future? The investigation's thoroughness, the community's heartbreak, and the media's relentless coverage ensured that Caroline's story would not be forgotten. It became a stark reminder of the need for vigilance and compassion in addressing the complexities of domestic violence. June 17, 2021, marked a pivotal moment in the case of Caroline Crouch. For over a month, the world believed Babish Anagnostopoulos' account of a home invasion that ended in his wife's brutal murder. However, the facade was about to crumble. Police, armed with an array of incriminating evidence, chose the memorial service for Caroline on Alanisos as the setting to confront Babish. This location was significant, a place tied deeply to Caroline's life and family. It was here that Babish's act of deception would meet its end. Under the pretense of a new development in the investigation, officers escorted Babish to Athens. Upon his arrival at the General Police Directorate, he was subjected to hours of intensive questioning. As detectives laid out the evidence against him, the pressure became insurmountable. The biometric data from Caroline's smartwatch, the activity logs from his phone, and the timeline gaps in his account painted a damning picture. Babish finally admitted to the crime, confessing to suffocating Caroline during what he described as a heated argument. He justified his actions by claiming he feared their daughter Lydia would grow up without either parent, leading him to fabricate the robbery scenario. The confession marked a turning point, but it also left investigators and the public grappling with deeper questions. Babish's demeanor during his admission, calm, calculated, and devoid of visible remorse, was chilling. This behavior contrasted sharply with the image of a grieving husband he had maintained for weeks. The confession provided closure to some aspects of the case but opened new avenues of analysis. How could someone so close to Caroline, someone who professed to love her, commit such an act? Was this a crime of passion, or was it a premeditated act masked as a moment of rage? Following his confession, Babish Anagnostopoulos faced multiple charges, including murder, animal abuse, and obstruction of justice. The case moved swiftly to trial, beginning in 2022. The courtroom became a stage where the full extent of Babish's actions and the calculated cover-up were laid bare. Prosecutors presented a mountain of evidence, meticulously pieced together by forensic experts and investigators. Each piece painted a portrait of a man who had not only taken a life but had gone to extraordinary lengths to conceal his guilt. One of the most powerful testimonies came from Caroline's father, David Crouch. In his statements, he described the anguish of losing his daughter and the betrayal he felt upon learning of Babish's role in her death. Witnesses from Caroline's circle shared insights into the dynamics of the couple's relationship, revealing troubling patterns of control and manipulation. These accounts were supported by forensic psychologists, who characterized Babish as calculating and emotionally detached. The court also examined the staged crime scene in detail. Prosecutors highlighted the deliberate nature of Babish's actions, from the hanging of the family dog to removing the surveillance camera's memory card. These acts were framed as evidence of premeditation, challenging Babish's narrative of an impulsive crime. In his defense, Babish reiterated his claim that the murder was unplanned, attributing it to an uncontrollable moment of anger during an argument. However, this assertion failed to sway the court. The evidence of his calm and calculated behavior following the crime, including his ability to mislead police and the public for 37 days, contradicted his claims of a momentary lapse in control. The trial culminated in a unanimous verdict. The court found Babish guilty of murder committed in a calm state of mind, a legal classification in Greece that denotes premeditation. He was sentenced to life imprisonment for the murder, with an additional 10-year sentence for the killing of the family dog. Further penalties included a fine of €20,000 and additional years for providing false testimony and obstructing the investigation. The severity of the sentencing reflected the calculated and heinous nature of the crime. Despite the conviction, the case left lingering questions that continue to haunt those who followed it. Central among them is the question of motive. Was Caroline's murder truly an unplanned act, as Babish claimed, or was it the result of premeditation fueled by deeper issues within their relationship? Friends and acquaintances spoke of tension in their marriage, with Caroline reportedly expressing dissatisfaction and a desire to leave. Did Babish's fear of losing control over Caroline and their daughter drive him to commit the ultimate act of violence? The role of manipulation in the aftermath of the crime also raises troubling questions. How was Babish able to maintain such a convincing facade for over a month? His ability to garner sympathy and deflect suspicion suggests a level of emotional detachment and cunning that many found deeply unsettling. Forensic experts speculated that his calm demeanor during his confession and trial reflected a lack of remorse, a trait often associated with psychopathy. Another unresolved aspect is the long-term impact on Lydia, the couple's young daughter. At the time of Caroline's murder, Lydia was just 11 months old. In the years since, custody of Lydia has been granted to Caroline's family, who relocated her to the Philippines to be raised with her cousins. While this decision ensures her safety and a loving environment, questions remain about how she will one day reconcile with the knowledge of her parents' story. How will Lydia cope with the legacy of her father's actions and the loss of her mother? The case also sparked broader societal discussions about domestic violence and the warning signs that often go unnoticed. For many, Caroline's death became a symbol of the silent struggles faced by victims of abuse. Advocacy groups in Greece and abroad used the case to highlight the importance of early intervention and the need for systemic changes to protect vulnerable individuals. These discussions continue, ensuring that Caroline's story serves as both a cautionary tale and a call to action. The murder of Caroline Crouch and the subsequent trial of Babish Anagnostopoulos stand as a harrowing reminder of the complexities of human relationships and the depths of deception. While the legal proceedings have concluded, the emotional and societal impact of the case endures. Caroline's family and the community that loved her strive to honor her memory, even as they grapple with the unanswered questions and the scars left behind. This case is not just about a crime, it is about the lives it shattered and the lessons it imparts. In the face of such a tragedy, one can only hope that justice, though served, brings some measure of solace to those left behind. Babish Anagnostopoulos remains behind bars, serving his life sentence following the conviction for the murder of Caroline Crouch. The Greek judicial system upheld the severity of his sentence, reaffirming the premeditated and calculated nature of his crime. Alongside the life sentence, he is serving additional years for the killing of the family dog and his attempts to obstruct justice. As for their daughter, Lydia, custody was awarded to Caroline's parents. To ensure her safety and provide her with a stable environment, Lydia has since moved to the Philippines, where she is being raised with her cousins. Far from the shadows of her father's actions, she now lives under the loving care of her mother's family. The case of Caroline Crouch remains a poignant reminder of the devastating consequences of unchecked domestic violence and the importance of recognizing warning signs in relationships. For many, her story serves as a wake-up call about the hidden dynamics of abusive relationships and the need for vigilance, not just within families but also within communities. Caroline's death has sparked ongoing discussions about the role of education and societal awareness in preventing similar tragedies. Advocacy groups in Greece and beyond have pointed to this case as a call to action, emphasizing the need for systemic changes in how domestic violence is identified and addressed. Technology's role in solving the case has also brought new perspectives on its capabilities in law enforcement. The smartwatch on Caroline's wrist, once a simple accessory, became a crucial witness to the crime. The digital trail left by Bobish, from his phone logs to the tampered surveillance footage, unraveled his web of lies. These advancements highlight the evolving nature of criminal investigations and the potential of technology to ensure justice in even the most complex cases. Caroline's tragic story continues to resonate with those who followed the case, prompting reflection on the importance of vigilance and support for those facing similar struggles. While the legal proceedings have concluded, the emotional impact lingers, reminding us of the importance of fostering environments where individuals feel safe and supported. What do you think about this case? Could it have been prevented? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, don't hesitate to reach out to local support organizations or hotlines for help. It's never too late to take the first step toward safety and healing. Thank you for watching this episode. Stay safe, and remember, not everything is as it seems. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell to join us next time for another gripping true crime story that delves deep into the human psyche and the quest for justice.